Welcome to EXO Fleet's Insights, where every mile counts. The podcast where fleet data turns into real-world decisions. Each episode, we unpack what's really happening across mixed fleets, fuels and sites, and how better insights leads to better performance, lower costs, and fewer surprises on the road. So let's get into it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brenda Shanahan, and I'm your host this afternoon. Niamh Quinn is our producer, and Kevin Christopher, the co-founder of Zero Emission, is in the hot seat. Kevin, will you share your background and experience with us in the world of electrification of vehicles?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brenda. And I'm very happy to be here. My background in e-mobility goes back almost 15 years now. I got my start in the industry working for an electrical contractor, putting on the tool belt, doing design, implementation, service and maintenance of different types of charging infrastructure. I did that for a number of years. And then I worked for a company called ChargePoint for about 5 years, focused on primarily medium and heavy vehicle electrification. So my background really just centers around the intersection of fleets, electrification, and network services on top of that. So I have a very good understanding of the challenges that these new vehicles present to our prospects and clients, and how to think about overcoming those challenges. And hopefully we'll be able to share some of that insight through our conversation today.
So we've spoken at length about the complexities associated with transition to electric vehicles. If I was to come to you now and say, well, what are the 3 key pillars of success that I need to implement in order for it to be a successful transition, what would you say?
I'd say the first thing would be maybe taking a step back and just identifying where within the journey you are. Here at Zero Emission, we like to group folks into just 3 different categories or stages, if you will. So the first stage to us is really that fleet that's in the very kind of nascent phase of planning for zero emission vehicles. Maybe there's an ESG commitment or a top-down regulation that's moving them to consider these new technologies. The second stage would be that you maybe deployed a number of these systems and are figuring out how to maybe refine or make that better, and then starting to think about the next project. And the third phase is really when you've got maybe dozens or if not hundreds of these vehicles and charging systems deployed and are now thinking about scaling up. If I take it back to stage 1, I think the 3 pillars of success really are first, coming back into things like stakeholder engagement. So within your organization, starting to identify whom is going to come along this journey with you. One of the things with electric fueling that's very different from traditional diesel-based fueling is there are many more interdependencies. And Brenda, we were just having a chat offline about the fact that, if you have, for example, a circuit tripping for a charger, it means the charger is not working. And now the typically what would be a facility's problem is now the fleet manager's problem because the vehicle is probably not going to be ready. So just identifying those folks that are going to need to be along that journey, and then aligning yourself with credible partners who can help you externally think about the questions that you need to ask around, what makes and models of vehicles are out there, which of those are best fit for my use case, and then working backwards from there to develop a sound plan around how we're going to get from maybe not knowing what we don't know to identifying that and then putting a plan together. So those would be kind of the 3 things: internal stakeholder engagement, identifying your partners externally, and then identifying, just the questions that you need to be asking to figure out what's best fit for your use case.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It seems to be a big issue, doesn't it, in businesses where they really don't know who is responsible for this big project. Maintenance and facilities are saying, that's not their job. The fleet managers are saying it's not their job. Energy management is not solely their job. I suppose in our experience, it's getting everybody on board, isn't it, to help them to plan and roll it out. So a lot of our clients already have existing systems in place that they should use to analyze data in preparedness for that. What are those systems and how should they use them?
And that's a great question, Brenda. And we feel very strongly as a data-focused company that you really should be using your own data to empower you to make more informed decisions around particularly vehicle electrification. In our eyes, the vehicle side of things is the most paramount. Everything is driven based on your use case, the makes and models of vehicles that you operate today and that you will consider for the electrification side. And working backwards from there, you can really start to unlock, okay, well, what types of chargers and what configuration, and then what are the electrical service requirements and all the other downstream considerations. But to really help inform the vehicle piece, for operators that have an existing telematics system in place that has data coming off of the vehicles, even things this in terms of GPS, in the dispatch routing, so the routes that they've been performing against, and fuel consumption associated with that. Even those kind of three pillars are really helpful into thinking about, how can we go from a diesel-based fleet into something that's more zero emission based?
If you had to sit down and start planning now for your charging infrastructure, how would you even go about that?
One of the things that I really like to focus on, again, going back to the last topic, is really just taking a look at your existing data. What we would typically do with clients, just as a starting point, is really understanding, what vehicles are you operating today, kind of what's the age of that fleet, and then what are the, kind of use cases that you're actually operating the vehicles in. And just what I mean by that is looking at the different services that you're running. What are the profiles of those routes, just in terms of the distance, the times that the vehicles are out there, what are the layaway points, and then also what are the general kind of external conditions, what's the kind of climate that you're operating in? How does that change seasonally? What is the traffic conditions? All of these pieces have some, if not a meaningful impact on how to think about electrification. And so when we start thinking about system design, it has to really start with the use case and the vehicles that are out there. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the potential pitfalls and risk associated with, cost, I think, as we get through the webinar. But it's really just first starting with that place. What am I actually operating? What am I needing to electrify? And then working backwards from there to develop a sound plan.
If anything you heard today reflects the challenges you're facing in your fleet, get in touch with us today at Exofleets. We're always happy to talk through real-world solutions. exofleets.com